Picture this. It's 1942, and while America's most gorgeous movie star is dazzling audiences on the silver screen, she's spending her nights hunched over blueprints and radio equipment, developing technology that would become the foundation for your smartphone, Wi-Fi, and GPS. But here's the twist. The US Navy completely rejected her invention, and she never made a single penny from what's now worth billions. This is the incredible true story of Hedy Lamarr, the Hollywood goddess who lived the ultimate double life. Everyone knew Hedy as the exotic European beauty who set hearts racing in films like Samson and Delilah. What they didn't know was that between takes, she was solving engineering problems that had stumped the world's top scientists. Her story doesn't begin in Hollywood, it starts in Nazi-controlled Austria, where she was trapped in a nightmare marriage that would accidentally prepare her to change the world forever. Born Hedwig Kiesler in Vienna in 1914, young Hedy showed signs of brilliance early. While other kids played with toys, 5-year-old Hedy was taking apart her music box just to understand how it worked. Her father, a bank director, would take her on long walks explaining how streetcars and printing presses operated. These conversations planted seeds that would later bloom into world-changing innovations. But first, Hedy had to survive becoming the most notorious woman in Europe. At just 18, Hedy starred in a Czech film called Ecstasy that shocked the world. She appeared completely nude and simulated what many consider cinema's first female orgasm outside of pornography. The film was banned in the United States for decades, but it made Hedy internationally infamous. Suddenly, every wealthy man in Europe wanted to meet the scandalous actress. One of them would nearly destroy her life before inadvertently setting her on the path to technological genius. Friedrich Mandl was Austria's third richest man and a major arms manufacturer. Despite being half Jewish himself, Mandl sold weapons to Mussolini's Italy and had business connections with Nazi Germany. When he became obsessed with marrying Hedy in 1933, her parents disapproved, but they couldn't stop their headstrong daughter. The wedding at Vienna's Karlskirche seemed like a fairy tale, and so Hedy realized she'd married a monster who'd become her prison warden. Mandl didn't just control Hedy's career, he controlled her entire existence. He tried to buy up every copy of Ecstasy to erase her scandalous past that locked her away in his remote castle like a character from a gothic horror story. But here's where the story takes an incredible turn. Mandl's business meetings became Hedy's secret graduate school in military technology. As his trophy wife, she sat silently through countless conferences with scientists, engineers, and weapons developers discussing the latest advances in radio-controlled weapons. While Mandl thought he was showing off his beautiful possession, Hedy was absorbing everything. She learned about torpedo guidance systems, radio jamming techniques, and the massive problem facing the Allied forces. Enemy ships could easily intercept and jam radio signals controlling torpedoes, rendering them useless. Her brilliant mind started working on solutions, but first she had to escape the man who'd become her captor. The escape itself has become legendary, though the exact details remain disputed. According to Hedy's own autobiography, she disguised herself as her maid one night in 1937, drugged the real maid, and fled to Paris in a stolen car. Other accounts suggest she simply convinced Mandl to let her wear our most expensive jewelry to a dinner party, then disappeared forever, catching the last train to Paris. Regardless of how she did it, Hedy Lamarr had broken free from Nazi-controlled Austria and was heading toward Hollywood stardom. After meeting MGM studio head Louis Mayer on a ship to New York, the former Hedwig Kiesler was reborn as Hedy Lamarr. Her American debut in Algiers opposite Charles Boyer made her an instant sensation, and within years, she was commanding massive salaries as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars. But the European war haunted her, and she desperately wanted to help the Allied cause. When she approached the National Inventors Council about contributing her scientific ideas, they had a different suggestion. Use your beauty to sell war bonds, not your brains to solve technical problems. Frustrated but not deterred, Hedy continued her secret work. At Hollywood parties, she met avant-garde composer George Antheil, whose experimental music involved synchronizing multiple player pianos. When Hedy explained her idea for preventing torpedo jamming by making radio signals hop between different frequencies, Antheil immediately understood how his player piano synchronization techniques could make it work. The collaboration between a movie star and a radical composer was about to produce one of the century's most imported inventions. Working in secret, Hedy and Antheil developed what they called a secret communication system. The concept was brilliant. Instead of using one radio frequency that enemies could easily jam, their system would make both the transmitter and receiver simultaneously jump between 88 different frequencies in a pattern synchronized like player piano rolls. enemy forces trying to jam the signal would be chasing a transmission that kept disappearing and reappearing on different frequencies faster than they can track it. On August 11, 1942, Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil received U.S. patent number 2292387 for their frequency hopping invention. They immediately donated the technology to the U.S. Navy for free, wanting only to help win the war against fascism. But in a decision that would haunt military history, Navy officials completely rejected their revolutionary idea. One engineer reportedly scoffed, "What do you want to do, put a player piano in a torpedo?" The patent was locked away and forgotten. The irony is staggering. While Hedy was being celebrated as Hollywood's most beautiful woman, the military was dismissing the work of one of the century's most important inventors. Her frequency hopping technology was so advanced that it wouldn't be practically implemented until the 1960s, when the Navy finally started using it during the Cuban Missile Crisis, after the original patent had expired, meaning Hedy and Antheil never received a penny in compensation. But Hedy's personal life was becoming as chaotic as her technological achievements were groundbreaking. Between 1933 and 1965, she married 6 different men: arms dealer Friedrich Mandl, screenwriter Gene Markey, actor John Loder, nightclub owner Ernest Stauffer, oil millionaire Wade Howard Lee, and lawyer Louis Boys Jr. Her longest marriage lasted just 6 years. Each relationship seemed to end in disaster, leaving Hedy increasingly isolated despite her fame. The woman who had once commanded $4,500 per week at MGM found herself financially struggling in the 1960s. Poor investments, controlling husbands who mismanaged her money, and a fading film career left her nearly broke. In a desperate attempt to maintain her lifestyle, Hedy was arrested twice for shoplifting. Once in 1966 for $86 worth of merchandise from a Los Angeles department store, and again in 1991 for $21.48 worth of items from a Florida drugstore. Despite having thousands of dollars in movie studio checks in her purse during the first arrest, she was caught stealing small personal items. Both cases were eventually dismissed. The scandals overshadowed her incredible contributions to technology. The cruelest irony came in her final years. While Hedy lived as a recluse in a small Florida apartment, often unable to pay her utility bills, the world was becoming completely dependent on the technology she'd invented decades earlier. Every time someone used a cell phone, connected to Wi-Fi, or relied on GPS navigation, they were using variants of Hedy Lamarr's frequency hopping innovation. The invention that she'd given away for free to help win World War II had become the foundation of the entire modern telecommunications industry. Recognition came heartbreakingly late. In 1997, when Hedy was 83 years old, the Electronic Frontier Foundation finally gave her and Antheil the Pioneer Award for their contributions to secure communications. She was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014, 14 years after her death. By then, her frequency hopping technology was estimated at $30 billion annually, but her estate never received compensation. Hedy Lamarr died on January 19, 2000, age 86, largely forgotten by a world that owed her an enormous technological debt. Her son spread some of her ashes in the Vienna woods near her childhood home, bringing the woman who'd fled Nazi Austria full circle to her origins. She'd lived long enough to see the dawn of the internet age, but died before fully understanding how completely her wartime invention had transformed human civilization. The woman who was called the world's most beautiful was actually the world's most brilliant inventor, but the world couldn't see past her face to appreciate her mind. Today, every wireless device in your home connects to the world using the principles that Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil developed while trying to help democracy survive its darkest hour. The next time you send a text message or stream a video, remember that you're using technology invented by a Hollywood goddess who was brilliant enough to change the world, but lived in an era too small-minded to let her. Hedy's story is a masterclass in the tragedy of untapped potential and the price of being decades ahead of your time. She proved that genius comes in many forms, but society often only values the most obvious gifts while ignoring the revolutionary ideas brewing beneath the surface. Her legacy reminds us that the most important innovations sometimes come from the most unexpected places, and that we should never underestimate what someone can accomplish when they refuse to be limited by other people's expectations.